Welcome to Spiritism Today.
My name is Daryl Barringer, and this is my lovely wife, Jeanette Barringer, and we are the hosts of Spiritism Today. We're glad you're able to be with us in order to study and research the Spiritist Doctrine.
Now our daughter will offer the opening prayer.
Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed by thy name. Lord, we believe in thee because everything about us reveals your goodness and your power. Blind, then, is the one who does not recognize your works. Prideful is the one who does not worship you. And the ungrateful is the one who does not give thanks to you.
The French educator, medium, and scientist Allan Kardec wrote a Spiritist philosophy about life, death, reincarnation, and more, dictated by the superior spirits in 1880. Our Spiritist speaker will bring us an understanding about these topics and much more.
We'd like to invite you to watch the Spiritism teachings.
Lesson 1. God, foundation of our lives. You have already studied the basic principle in Spiritism 101, the existence of God. Now we're going to give deeper steps into the Spiritist view of God. In this lesson, the objectives are to empower you to discuss the evolution of humankind's idea about God throughout history, and also to give you tools to identify God as a loving parent and creator while outlining the proofs of God's existence. So let us recap a couple steps and understand a little bit more about what humankind has thought about God. So we can give some of God's attributes over time as we study deeper in this lesson and understand the meaning behind of it all. Of course, you may tell at this point, oh, I know God is all-powerful, just and good. But can we truly explain why? Yes, maybe we can, but now it's going to be our opportunity not only to explain, but to feel it, to experience it. As Euripides Barçanufo, great medium and spiritist in the beginning of the 20th century in Brazil, he used to say, we need to learn not only to think about things, but to experience it at deeper levels. When we can conjugate mind and emotions, then will be the reasoning and the emotional level, then we'll raise ourselves at another level of understanding. So this lesson will first recap what humanity has always thought about God, the different concepts, and how they can impact on our everyday lives. For example, if we rewind the tape of the history of humanity, we're going to see that the Egyptians gave the name to God Elim, the Chinese named God Tien, and we know from the ancient Greeks and then the Romans that Zeus, the youngest son of Cronus and Rhea, was the supreme ruler of Mount Olympus and of the pantheon of gods who lived in it, for the people who believed in many gods. Then Brahma or Buddha for Indians was the name of God. For Hebrews, Jehovah is the name of God. But mostly, all civilizations had this relationship with God in such a way that God had this anthropomorphic view. So God was more than God. For many people, more important was to feel God just like one of us. When we go to the ancient Greeks and Romans, they understood God as someone that was close to them, very powerful, but could be vengeful. But Jesus Christ brought us something different, a new concept. Not only one that makes justice like Jehovah for the Hebrews, but a loving parent. So much so that Spiritism brings it back, revisits Jesus' concept, and gives another step. When we understand that God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, first cause of all things, the impact of this concept in our lives are so immense. Because whenever we feel anything that is not pleasant in our lives, if we go back to the root of the meaning of this affirmation, this statement, it can change the feeling of unpleasantness. Nowadays, for example, science, they are suggesting that when we feel pain, it's a feeling that can be changed by the way we see life, by our personality and mood. Meaning, the way we understand God can change our experience and interaction with life. This is question and answer number 1 of the Spirit's book. Then Kardec brings to us another question in which the Spirits, in question number 2, reminds us that God is infinite in divine perfection. When Kardec was asking if God and infinite are the same, infinity, they said, these words are so poor, they don't really match. We can tell, they said, that God is infinite in its perfection. Then, meaning there's no limit to God's perfection. There's no limit to God's love. Only to our understanding of God's love. They give us more. They give us the proofs of God. How can we prove that God exists? Well, they say, look around and see everything that is not man-made. Then it is the supreme intelligence. Kardec brings to us this understanding that there is no effect without a cause. So if there is a cause, the cause of the cause is God. Oh, but there is another cause for that cause. Then the first cause is what we're calling God. Words are words, but in this definition it's unmistakable. Then how do we know that God really exists? Because it's an universal sentiment. And Kardec asked this question to the spirits, but how do we know it's not learned? Well, they say, go to the most primitive people. They always had this idea, this feeling, this notion that there must be something higher. This universality of the feeling and sentiment tells us that it is in ourselves the proof of God. Of course, neuroscientists nowadays are maybe claiming that it's all produced by the brain. But even Dr. Newberg, who is the leader in this field, he says, it could be both ways, the interpretation. It's a matter of interpretation of data. Because if our brain is simply a filter of the soul's mind, then the brain does not produce God. Unless there is no soul. And there are already many proofs in many researchers, including William James' research on mediumship of Leonard Piper and others, that there is something beyond the physical body. Also, knowing that there is no chance, the formation of things are an intelligent effect, in itself we find the proof of God. And Kardec makes this comment, like a picture we see on the wall, a picture. If we want to know about the author of the picture, then what do? We simply analyze to understand the mind of the author. Then we observe and analyze the painting. The same for God. God is the supreme being. Lesson 2. Human soul, good and evil. Congratulations, you made to your second lesson in the Spiritist Science course. Now that you have already understood at a deeper level about the existence of God and the attributes of God, how about if we talk about one of God's creations, ourselves? Spirits at the human level. And not only that, but try to understand at a deeper level the source of good and evil inside of all of us. It can be truly life-changing, really impacting our daily lives. This lesson has a few goals, one of them being to understand the human soul according to the Spiritist view. Second, to elaborate the concept of morality. Third, to establish the concept of good and evil. And fourth, to correlate the practice of good to the level of humanity's responsibility. So let us go to other cultures and also go back in time to understand what people of different cultures understood about the human soul. Well, if we go to the etymology of the word soul, we are going to learn that it comes from a Germanic root. A Germanic root that actually derived from the Greek word anima in some way and form that we know is very universal, and then the Greek and Latin that give it to us the meaning life, spirit, consciousness. So for many people, when you talk about soul, they're going to say, oh, it's the spark of consciousness inside of all of us. Well, what is it then? Well, it depends. If we go back to the first philosophers, the famous ones like Plato, he would say the soul is the essence of a person. And if we go to the gospel, according to Spiritism, in its introduction, Kardec very wisely and at the vanguard of human thoughts bring to us that both Plato and Socrates were forerunners of Spiritism, because their understanding of the human soul, besides other precepts and concepts, was the same as we see in Spiritism. If we think about human beings, the soul is the core, the essence, the imperishable one. Then, comparing to other philosophies like Buddhism, in which the soul is an ever-changing entity. Well, this is still true, and of course we're just bringing here for our curiosity the different features that each culture brings to us, because maybe in this life we have had the experience or not, but in previous lives we may have been there, and there are truths everywhere, the universality of the teachings of Spiritism. In Christianity, the soul is regarded as the entity that connects to the body, but is not the body itself. So if the body perishes, then, the soul still exists. And of course, for some parts of Christianity, it's understood that when the soul dies, it may go to either heaven, hell, or purgatory. Well, Spiritism may see it in a different perspective. How does Spiritism sees it? Here we have God's universe in a representation with this beautiful picture taken by NASA. And God, as we have already studied, the supreme intelligence of the universe, first cause of all things, creating two elements. This is what Kardec brings to us in the Spirit's book. Actually, the Spirits brought to us through Kardec's question the universal Trinity, God as being this uncreated creator, the beginning of all beginnings, and creating two elements, the spiritual principle and the material principle. Both evolve when they are connected through what we call the universal cosmic fluid. They evolve in such a way that our spiritual principle will evolve from simplicity and ignorance to the level of different kingdoms in internships of matter, till one day we get to the human level, human soul. Here we are human souls. Where then comes the source of good and evil inside of us? Why are people so different from one another? This is the question. This is the question we want to study in this lesson. Where does the source of good and evil come inside of the human soul? Lesson 3. Incarnation, union of soul and body. In Spiritism 101, you have studied about incarnation, reincarnation. Now we're going to deepen that understanding to get to know more about how the body and the soul get connected. The implications of this are fundamental in life. They may change our decisions in life in so many ways. Not only that, may also help us understand about our connection with our physical body. For example, for people who think about, oh, that person is a walk-in. If you have never heard this term before, this is a very esoteric belief in which spirits take over dead bodies and use those bodies to enliven them, and some people are like walk-ins. That, we'll see tonight, it doesn't exist at all. So the lesson number 3 has 2 main goals. To define the moment of union between soul and body. This is essential for us to get to know. To identify the spirit's condition between the moment of conception and birth. And there is a third correlated goal that we may also touch up during this lesson. To correlate divine justice in the forgetfulness of the past. Learning about the unity of body and soul, we're going to know why we forget about the past when we reincarnate, for example. Why? And also the preciousness of each and every life. So in this lesson, we begin by studying the answer of the spirits to Kardec's question 344 of the Spirit's book. When Kardec asked, when does exactly the soul, the spirit, because remember, soul is the definition of an incarnated spirit. So when does a spirit actually incarnates in the physical form? Some people think, oh, at the time of birth. Really? So what was the force really creating that body? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have two logics behind it. Spiritism is very much rational understanding. It has a lot of reasoning in its foundation. So the spirits bring to us the understanding that the union begins at conception, but is only complete at the moment of birth. This means that by the time a woman is pregnant, it means there is a spirit connected to that body. If I commit an abortion, am I committing a crime? Yes, because there is life there. Of course, we're not going to be punished and live in hell for the rest of our lives. No. But we are going against the laws of God. Because there is life connected to that body. If we did it and we didn't know about the reality, we forgive ourselves. But once we know it, we better comply for the sake of our own conscience. So the union begins at conception. Then we are going to understand that from the moment of conception, the spirit designated to inhabit a given body is connected to it by a fluidic tie, which gets tighter and tighter up to the instant that the child is born. Of course, at the beginning, it's not, the connection is not as strong, but then it becomes very strong. Is it the reason why we know in science that the first 3 months are very fragile? This is the reason why. Science usually explains the fact, but not the reasons for the fact. Spiritism goes to the cause. So that's why they are so complementary. And the beauty of Spiritism, it doesn't go against science. It does a partnership with science. So here we are in this lesson inviting you to get to know more about the ins and outs of this union of soul and body at each and every incarnation, and how transformative the teachings can be. Lesson 4, Reincarnation, Goals and Mechanisms. In the previous course, you have studied about reincarnation, just the basics of it. Now, the lesson number 4 is about to identify reincarnation as God's forms of justice and mercy. To learn about the objective of it, and how in reincarnation we will explain the diversity of moral and intellectual levels in the world. And finally, to understand, to comprehend the natural concept regarding reincarnations in other worlds. Reincarnation is our opportunity to learn new things and also to redress previous choices. Let's not consider mistakes something other than choices. Choices that led us in a way that at least we know, like Thomas Edison, of the many times he tried it, he said, you know, at least I know so many ways that this is not going to work. So whenever we make a mistake, here we are, learning that's not the path to go anymore. Others can learn from us also when we make mistakes. Not saying that we should make mistakes, but if we do, we're supposed to, find out the solution sooner than later. So reincarnation is also an opportunity for us to be exercising the role of creature of the Creator in our uniqueness. And this is one of the topics here. Reincarnation is going to be a venue for us to understand the diversity of human beings in the universe. And we say universe because that in this lesson we're going to know how and why reincarnations can happen in different worlds. So, most important is the concept that in question 383 of the Spirit's book, we learn that at each and every reincarnation, we have a very deep period, which is our childhood, in which our soul is very moldable. The soul's moldability is defined as the spirits say, the spirit is more impressionable during childhood, when the impressions it receives more easily mold its personality and therefore its progress. How many parents tell us, I'm not going to teach my religion to my child because they're not going to be able to understand. The day they get older, they will choose. Wrong. Why? Because our children are just there ready to learn whatever we teach from prenatal life. Not only when they are born, but even before. We can start teaching. Science already shows us that in prenatal life, we can learn so much. Things that can impact in our whole lives. So, in this lesson, dive deeply. Get to know more about the goals and mechanisms of reincarnation. Lesson 5. Spirit influence in our thoughts and actions. In this lesson, the goals of the lessons are to understand the interplay between the spiritual and the corporeal world. 2, to recognize cases of spiritual intervention in our lives. And then in this case, we will understand more about ourselves. Many people, they say, I don't believe spirits have greater influence in my life than I suppose. Well, Kardec asked this question to the spirits. Do spirits actually influence our thoughts and actions? And the superior spirits answered, to a greater level than you suppose. So if right now We think we're influenced this much, double it up, because that's what the spirits say. Literally, we're not aware of how much we are interconnected. This is what this lesson is going to be all about, to make us understand the deeper meaning of what it is in which spirits probe our thoughts. So, in order to do so, we need to revisit a couple important basic elements. First, our composition. We are spirits surrounded, enveloped by the spiritual body, the perispirit. And then we are connected. This perispirit is connected to the physical body, molecule by molecule. This is who we are. People like ourselves, incarnates, they have the same composition. The difference between us and the discarnates is that they don't have the physical body. But their essence is the same. They still have an envelope, the spiritual body or perispirit, which means that the means of communication is past the physical body. We don't communicate with each other through the physical body. We think we do, but not necessarily. Let's revisit this. André Louis, the Spirit Doctor, which you have studied in the first course in the books No Solar and the Messengers, there is another book of his 16-book series, Mechanisms of Mediumship, which is to be published very soon, in which he talks about the law of the mental field. This is how communication, mind-to-mind communication works. We are spirits, and we have several different thoughts. In this diagram, let's represent each different thought we have, because science already recognizes that we have more than 50,000 thoughts a day. So let's say the directions, the resultants of each cluster of thought is one of these arrows. They go to different directions, different interests, etc. Other people, just like us, are also thinking. Let's say one of these thoughts get attuned to the same line of frequency of other spirits that, just like us, have that same thought. For example, now, we like studying Spiritism. You do too. That's why right now we are connected. So just like these two spirits, we are connected this very moment. And many other people who, like us, have the same goal, the same thought, the same will. Then André Louis explains, in the law of the mental field or the field of mind lies the energetic home of the spirit. And then each individual will assimilate only the influences that it attracts to. So there, if I am sending a thought to that direction, I will connect to people who are like-minded. That's why one of the implications of this is there is no victim in this universe. If we connect to someone, there is a reason that can be understood by the law of the field of the mind. That tells us that the bonds of affection between spirits and people are relying on the same principle. And this we can get to know more in the Spirit's book, Question and Answer 484. When Kardec asked these questions, how spirits and incarnate people actually get attuned to one another, and the rule of the game is very straightforward. Good spirits empathize with those who want to improve themselves. And the good spiritist is the one that makes effort to improve himself, to do the inner transformation. If we do so, we're going to gain the empathy of the good spirits, who will more likely than not boost a seed of our faith and transform our lives in unimaginable ways. On the other hand, suffering spirits, they actually prefer wrongdoers, people who are addicted to things in life, who are stuck in selfishness and pride. Of course, we're still growing, But if we make efforts, we'll gain new friends. Lesson 6, Spirit Communication. In the previous lesson, you studied about how spirits can influence our thoughts and actions, the basic principles for this mind-to-mind interaction. And Emmanuel says, mediumship is all about a mind-to-mind communication as well. So, what is mediumship? This lesson, we're going to delve into this understanding. The goals of this lesson are very simple. 1, to give the Spiritist view on the prohibition of mediumistic communications in the Old Testament, and to understand why spirit communications can be means of human progress. Is it so true? Well, it is. How, you may be asking? Well, it all begins in the simple but very transformative principle in life. In the Medium's book by Kardec, the first chapters, we learn everyone who is in any degree influenced by spirit is a medium. So in the previous lesson, you were studying about how spirits communicate with us, influence our thoughts and actions. If we feel we're being influenced, or actually if we're being influenced, even if we don't recognize it, we can be mediums. So we are all mediums. Of course, we're going to get to know at different levels. In Spiritism 101, you have already briefly revisited the concept that we may be ostensible mediums or at subliminal level. Anyway, we are all influenced at a certain degree. In our everyday lives, we can actually learn more about our mediumship, how spirit communication works, at levels that for some people are subliminal, but if we recognize it, that's why the Spirit said to Kardec, the most effective way for us to live a happier life is to know ourselves, self-knowledge. Self-knowledge, observing ourselves, observing how we feel, observing how we interact in life. Well, in the book, in the domain of mediumship, and also Mechanism of Mediumship, André Luiz, through the hands of Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira, two mediums, in a phenomenal mediumistic event, when two mediums psychograph a book, the same book, alternating chapters without even talking to each other about what's going on in the chapters. And if you read the book, you're going to realize that they really have no difference whatsoever in the ones that were psychographed by Chico Xavier and from the ones that were psychographed by the medium Valdo Vieira. In these books, they talk about mediumship in our everyday lives, like in our thought forms, our thoughts. Simply, we are there and suddenly a thought comes up and you don't even know where it came from. Or what they call the ignore mediumship, when they talk about people who help others. For example, you suddenly feel like this urge to go make a call and help someone or help someone in the street, etc. And then when you get to know they were in need of something, like many cases from Chico Xavier, they said that the spirits were using people to help others without the mediums even knowing that they were in need of help. They were put in the pathway of those people in need so they can receive help. This is also a form of mediumship. But also gossiping, systematic criticism, eating excessively, smoking, alcoholic drinking, etc., drugs, illegal drugs use, sexual addiction can also be, in André Luiz's own words, is an expression of this spirit interaction in our everyday lives. Like the case of a man in the book In the Domains of Mediumship, in which they talk about a journalist who was at a bar to write an article for the newspaper. It was about a case that was happening, and it was a very dramatic case. He didn't know that suddenly he was there, he felt so inspired to write the gossiping article that actually was to create a lot of commotion and drama. And on the behind the scenes, there was this spirit obsessor of the person who was being talked about, that was being using the journalist as an instrument to just create greater commotion in this person's life. Then think about nowadays, how many people are being instruments of so much spirit obsessors who are using ignored mediums who don't know they are mediums, but are being mediums. And how many times in our daily works, daily jobs, we have these things going on. I know you want to know more. So now it's your turn to go deeper into the understanding of spirit communication in this lesson. Also to learn more about why did Moses, despite the beauty of mediumship and so much that can be brought to life with mediumship, why did he prohibit at his time? It's important to know, because is it wrong or is it right to communicate with the deceased or the departed ones? Lesson 8, Fluids and Perispirit. In this lesson, now that you have already studied about spirit communication, is our opportunity to understand more of one of the main elements of ourselves as human beings, our spiritual body, our perispirit, and how it works. A little bit about the physiology. In the third course, the advancements of the Spiritist science, we will go deeper and deeper. But this is the first time we're going to dedicate a whole lesson solely to the perispirit, a very important element that can make a true difference in our everyday lives. In this lesson, the first goal is to understand fluids in their interaction with ourselves. Then, to explain how the formation of the perispirit occurs, and to study the known properties of the perispirit. To begin it, we'd like to give you an introduction about what humanity, throughout different times, has thought about the spiritual body. Spiritists are not the only one to think that we have a more ethereal envelopment. Actually, it has always thought through at different time points in humanity's history. So, the constitution of the perispirit we'll learn more. And in this slide, we're going to show you, and this is taken by the book Evolution into Worlds, that is to be published very soon in the English language, psychographed by Chico Xavier and Valdo Vieira, and the spirit author is André Lewis. We learned that this perispirit or spiritual body has different names. In ancient Egypt, we learned that it was named Ka. In Greece, it was named Eidolon. Paracelso, who was a scientist basically, he talked about it as the sidereal body. Spiritual body, in case of, for example, St. Paul, when he talks about the spiritual body being the physical body different from the spiritual body, he talked about it. And the astral body, as many other philosophies talk about it nowadays. More recently, people like Deepak Chopra talk about the quantum body. So, different names for the same thing. Or like Reiki or other philosophies, etc., they talk about the etheric body. For us, it doesn't matter the name. Most important, it is to recognize that what we in Spiritism talk about as being the perispirit is a notion that was already unveiled for so many thousands of years. Now it is our turn to understand more. One, how it works, how it varies, how we interact with the environment, with the fluids, as we say. People talk about energy. A more precise word for this is fluids. Is this very quintessence matter that can be molded by our thoughts and feelings. And so much so that the perispirit, which envelops our physical body and the spirit, contains the quality of our thoughts. Can you imagine, once we know of it, the impact of this concept in our lives? Knowing that our thoughts and feelings are stored. Like Leon Denis says in the book Here and Hereafter, he says the perispirit is going to be holding the whole reservoir of our thoughts, feelings, actions. So we better think about what we're thinking. Lesson 9, Earth and the Universe. In Spiritism 101, there was a lesson, you may remember, about the multitude of the inhabited planets. Previously, when we talked about reincarnation in this course, we talked about the existence of reincarnation in different worlds. Now, specifically, we want to understand a little bit deeper about the status of Earth in the universe. So the goals of this lesson are to understand the many worlds in the universe and their classification, to comprehend the worlds that they evolve as its inhabitants evolve as well, and then to explain why Earth is a planet of trials and expiations, and finally to infer, to predict, or to derive about Earth's future. It's very important for us. Think about it. Let's think about it together. For example, if I leave my home today, knowing that Earth is not heaven yet, knowing that it's a world where we'll be tested, where we'll go through some learning experiences, sometimes they will be painful. Am I going to go back and whine and cry for the rest of the day? No. So it's going to change my attitude towards my life, my expectations towards people's relationships, my relationships with myself and others, including my family, people at work, community, neighborhood. It changes. So this is the reason why Emmanuel explained to us, he explained it to us in a book that is not translated yet. It was psychographed by Chico Xavier. Emmanuel, the spirit mentor of Chico Xavier, in a book that was entitled Emmanuel, he says that Earth may be, for different people, different things. For some people, it may be a prison because, for rebellious souls. He says that if we think Earth is a prison, it is because we're still rebellious spirits, rebellious souls. He says, for people who think or consider Earth a hospital, he says people who think Earth is a hospital is because we're sick souls. If we see Earth as a school, it is because we're then turning to be good souls. Now, which one we want to be? To turn ourselves from rebellious to sick souls to good souls, we need to get greater understanding about why Earth is in the state it is, and why, most importantly, is in a transition. Which transition is it? Where are we heading to? Is it going to be the Holocaust? Is it going to be the apocalyptic prophecy that is going to come true very soon? We don't think so. There's something more than that. A beautiful pathway just unfolding before our own eyes. We just need a greater understanding. Like the Spiritist lenses. So now we give you the 3D, better, 4D lenses for you to go learn deeper. Lesson 10, Divine Laws. Here we are. It's the first time since you began the Roadmap program, since Spiritism 101, the first time that we dedicate a whole lesson to understand about the Divine Laws. In the Spirit's book, third part of it, it's dedicated to the understanding of the natural or divine law of God. And it's broken down in several chapters and in 10 laws. So this lesson has many different goals. The first one being to define what divine or natural law is. Also, to mention the general laws which are consequences of God's law and characterize them. To explain why the divine law is not mutable. To comprehend the mechanism that provides man the knowledge of the natural law. To elaborate the necessary qualities for a man to be the revealer of God's law. And to understand the subdivision of the moral laws and the most important of all the laws. To introduce this better, we'd like to show you how one amazing scientist, a Nobel Prize, the Nobel Prize of 1906, Santiago, the Spanish neuroscientist, neuroanatomist, Santiago Ramon y Cajal. He used to live in Spain and was a brilliant mind. In his book, named Advice for a Young Investigator, he talks about something that is very interesting. He gives to us this beautiful notion about discoveries in life. When we talk about divine or natural law, we're talking about unveiling the laws of nature, the laws of God. Then not only spiritual religious people work on it, but human beings overall, including scientists. So here is his understanding about how we should, our attitude before life when we are unveiling laws that are beyond man-made laws. He says, nature is a harmonious mechanism where all parts, including those appearing to play a secondary role, cooperate in the functional whole. In contemplating this mechanism, shallow man arbitrarily divide its parts into essential and secondary, whereas the insightful thinker is content with classifying them as understood and poorly understood, ignoring for the moment their size and immediately useful properties. No one can predict their importance in the future. So, what you are about to study, the divine or natural laws according to Spiritism, can be viewed as the insightful thinker. Things that we already understand, things that we poorly understand. Not things like primary or secondary, because we're not shallow. As Robert de Rob has said, we have already been awakened. We are awakened. We are here, open to learn. And in that learning, we should consider things we already understand and things that we poorly understand. But things in the future can have great impact in our lives and in the lives of others. This is how the revelations happen. If we go to the Gospel according to Spiritism, it talks about the revelations. The first revelation being the Mosaic laws in regard to the moral laws. Then Jesus brought, as he said, I have not come to abolish the law but to fulfill them. He complements Mosaic law and brings to us the understanding of the divine law, the moral laws, in a different perspective, in a deeper level. And Spiritism comes as the third revelation to finally bring everything to a clearer level. So in this lesson, you'll be invited and suggested to read more about it, to study more about it, so you can also get a greater realization about life. The insights are so amazing, they can be also very transformative. So we invite you now to go to your exercises, from the warm-up exercises to the essay assignments, quizzes, and the creative assignment as well, and understand more about the constitution of our lives. If you are a person that watches and observes the laws, the man-made laws, the human laws, how should be our attitude towards the divine laws? So the Spirit's book invites us to dive deeply into the constitution of our own lives. If we comply with it, we'll be happier. And we better be happier sooner than later. Lesson 11, Christ Consciousness. In this lesson, we are inviting you to understand Jesus Christ as the guiding model of humanity, and also to observe the universality of Christ's teachings. It's very important for us to see how Spiritism understands Jesus Christ. It's revolutionary, because beyond being simply the Savior, with all due respect to all religions, but it's about understanding the true meaning of the coming of Christ. Some people think that the greatest sacrifice was when Christ was at the cross. Actually, the greatest sacrifice he made was to come here. How do we know it? In this book that is named A Caminho da Luz in Portuguese, in English probably it will be somewhere like In the Pathway of Light, and it was psychographed by Chico Xavier, and the spirit author is Emmanuel. He talks about the genesis, the spiritual genesis of planet Earth. First pages 17 and 18 of the Portuguese written book. In this book, chapter 1, Emmanuel talks about the history, in the whole book, the history of humankind, the one that we know, but with the Spiritist perspective. The history of humankind in a way that we can unfold the understanding of life on earth. So chapter 1, first paragraphs, Emmanuel says the following. And this is the cover of the book in the Portuguese version. It says, a community of pure and enlightened spirits presided the formation and direction of our planet Earth. And then, among the angelic and perfect spirits were Jesus, like a committee of spirits who were pure, who were Christ-like, were forming like engineers and architects of our planet. Among them, Jesus. So when people say, oh, Jesus is the only one in the soul, that's not what we understand in Spiritism. In the universe, there are many Christ-like spirits. That does not diminish Jesus Christ himself. On the contrary, it talks more about the reasons why he came here. And we can better fulfill what he called us for. And Emmanuel says, these spirits met twice near planet Earth. When planet Earth was coming out of the solar nebulae, again, you see, just like what science says, it doesn't confront science or antagonizes with it, it goes with it. And the second time they met was for the coming of Jesus Christ himself. Because can you imagine a spirit of an angelic stature that already vibrates at that intensity and frequency coming to our neighborhood? If we talk about computers, it is as if we could run a software in Windows 7, run it, a software that is only for Windows 7, in an older version like XP. It's probably not going to, or lower. It depends on the software, of course, you know. But basically, it's about changing the systems. And in this case, it was a great strategy that they made to make Jesus come to see us, live among us, and show us how human we can be, the best humanity we've ever had. So this is the goal of this lesson, to understand more what Jesus left for us. And he said when he left, "If you love me, keep my commandments, and I will pray to my Father, and he will send you another consoler, so that he may remain with you forever, forever, the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. But as for you, you will know him, because he will remain with you and will be among you. But the Consoler, who is the Holy Spirit, whom my Father will send in my name, will teach you all things and will enable you to remember everything that I have said to you." This is in John chapter 7, verses 15 to 17 and 26. In this passage, we're going to understand Jesus at another level. That he himself has never claimed that he was the sole source of the truth. That God in its greatness was going to send someone to remind ourselves of Jesus, to console ourselves and stay with us forever, not in a person, because it clearly says we're not going to see him. It's not a person. People are waiting for the second Christ. It's not going to happen. Not in the human form as we think. And we Spiritists think that Spiritism, the Spiritist teachings, not only in Kardec's books, but the teachings everywhere and elsewhere, in its universality, are actually the formation of the promised Consoler.
Thank you for being with us.
We hope you like watching the Spiritist Doctrines. We hope to see you next month so we can explore more about Spiritism. Thank you.
Now, our daughter will offer the closing prayer.
Please pray with me. Give us this day our daily bread. Give us the necessary food for our maintenance of our physical strength, and also give us the spiritual nourishment for the development of our spirits. Celestial friends, please magnetize our water. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for being with us today. Goodbye.